Hello, we're live.
Hello,
Welcome,
everybody.
everybody.
Hi.
um, Tonight, we're doing sort of an impromptu stream. We realized that we were not going to be around for 3 weeks, and there was a topic that we've kind of wanted to talk about. So we just decided to really quickly do this one tonight. It's
Yeah,
on religious trauma. And it's something that I think it's already, we know it's very popular among our followers, our viewers, and I think it's just going to become more so as more information comes out about it,
mm-hmm.
and people start identifying with it, saying, wow, that is something that has affected me and I didn't even realize it was something. So
Right.
I think that's going to be really important. And Jan, I know you actually suffer from religious trauma,
Mm-hmm.
being coming from a Mormon background. And
Mm-hmm.
my direct experience is my husband came from JW, who's very sort of similar. And Philip, I know that you don't have quite such a uh, volatile background with the religion that you were raised in, but you still have symptoms you've noticed.
Yeah,
So
and I definitely come from that religious upbringing. It's a difficult process, especially when you step away from that faith-based upbringing and try and find yourself, and you're trying to decondition yourself from everything that you thought you knew, everything that was kind of imparted into you, and trying to find yourself and, discover who you are, your place in the world.
yeah, and
It can be difficult. So there's definitely, trigger warning for some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about some of the most difficult
yeah,
parts of religious trauma.
Mm-hmm.
that's an important point. If you are triggered, if this is something that's difficult for you, we understand completely. I think if you have to leave, just go ahead. Don't feel obligated because um, this can. I know when I talk to my husband about it, it will bring everything up, and we'll get to
Yeah.
some of those things. I know how difficult it is. I have a lot of empathy for people who suffer from this. So one of the reasons why we thought tonight would be a good time to discuss this is that Jan had mentioned a study that they found, which actually talks about the number of people affected by religious trauma, which I think is pretty new, isn't it? Not the study, but just the idea of somebody trying to find out how many people even have this. So, do you want to just go over? There was just a section in there that gave some numbers to everybody.
Yeah, so this study is pretty recent. It came out this year, and it's just scratching the surface of this issue. And like many mental health diagnoses, it's religious trauma and religious trauma syndrome. It's always been around. It's just being discovered now as something very serious. Typically, it's kind of wrapped up into post-traumatic stress disorder or complex post-traumatic stress disorder. But anyways, so in this study, um, the purpose of it was to discover if religious trauma was a society-wide phenomenon or simply an affliction of only a small few. And what's interesting in this study, I believe they mentioned it in the beginning, they honestly didn't expect very much. They didn't really expect this to go anywhere. So, what they did is they took a little over 1,500 adults living in the United States, and they did a sociological study. And they what they found is that it is likely around one third, like 27 to 33% of U.S. adults, like conservatively, have experienced religious trauma at some point in their life. Um, the
That was
number,
surprising. That was
yeah,
much higher than what I thought.
and they believe that the number increases if it increases to 37%. It will do that if those suffering from any three of the six major religious trauma symptoms are included, and they lay out those sort of things in this study. So it is also likely that around 10 to 15% of US adults currently suffer from religious trauma, if only the most conservative numbers are highlighted. Nonetheless, since 37% of the respondents personally know people who potentially suffer from religious trauma, and 90% of those respondents know between 1 and 10 people who likely suffer from religious trauma, then it could be argued that as many as 1 in 5 US adults suffer from major religious trauma symptoms. And like I said, this is just scratching the surface. So they've only took this out of the 1,500 adults that they talked to. So if they're just finding this with just this little bit, it's going to be really interesting what they find if they expand this study.
Yeah, I know that they said that the numbers in there are conservative, but I'm sure they're probably much higher than that.
That's what
And,
yeah.
Well,
and Susan,
in any study, you can't really make statements of like, absolute certainty without more. But the authors that contributed to this study are people. There's like 4 authors. No, yeah, 4 authors. So Darren M. Slade, PhD, Adriana Smell, master's degree, Elizabeth Wilson, Rebecca Drumsta. This is all included here, and the amount of like sources that they uh, list here too is extreme. Like, and a lot of these sources I'm seeing comes from either like studying people with post-traumatic stress disorder or CPTSD, or this is directly examining the LGBTQ community.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's we know there's a huge connection there for obvious reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into as well. It's interesting because at first when I heard those numbers, like a third of people, I thought, wow, that's really high. And then when you hear what they actually come up with and you realize, wow, this is just scratching the surface, then you realize it's going to be a lot more when they finally identify more accurate numbers. I think it's gonna be huge. There's a lot of people walking around suffering and not really having anything specific to identify it with.
yeah.
It's
Right.
I'm so happy that more work is being done on it, and hopefully that will also mean that there will be resources and like therapies specifically targeted to helping people with that
I
who
think
are
that's
going.
something highly needed in
Yeah,
humanity right now is the deprogramming from religious thinking.
yeah. And I
Susan,
know,
are you going to add this into the description of the
you know,
video
I
people
will.
can look at the
Yes,
study?
yes, I
Okay.
will. And before we go on, because there's a lot to talk about, I want to just thank Morg. Thank you so much, Morg. We really
Oh,
appreciate it.
yeah, thank
And
you.
you're always so
Hello.
generous. And
Yeah, thank you to
also,
everybody who super chats and sends
yes,
comments.
and I think it was it Elise who, no, it was Ren Ferry who gifted, thank you so much, Ren, a membership. I love seeing those because then it's just so cool. We have more people who can be a member, and that's
Yeah.
Tyler got it. And also Becca sent a message saying such an important topic. Thank you for talking about it. Yeah, I think it's going to probably be at top. I feel like we've really kind of neglected it for a while, and we're going to probably come back to it more often. So
Yeah.
hello everybody out there. I think there's too many people to.
I think it's definitely something that a lot of people can relate to because a lot of people have encountered, religious backgrounds or have religious families or had religious upbringings. And so a lot of people can relate when we're talking about this trauma. They recognize that, and you can see the symptoms of that in the world and with a lot of different people.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about a lot of those different consequences of religious trauma.
I feel like this is one of like the more popular topics among Neogenians, because it just seems to get the most response of personal experience.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that we get a lot of people who have left, and they're looking for answers about existence, but and I think they're very, very intrigued by an option that is not atheism. That there's
Right.
something that is that explains reality, that is not just a meaningless nothing that does, that just ceases to be, that everything is just material. So I think that's why it resonates with a lot of
Leaving
people.
religion is so difficult. Like, and I don't mean like physically, like, like you don't go to church anymore, but just like in your head, just sort of like breaking up with God and getting rid of that idea. It's like having your entire foundation crumble beneath you. It's like having the carpet like or pulled out from underneath your feet.
Yeah, it really
Well, I think
is.
also you're stepping away from generations of tradition and you're
Mm-hmm.
deconditioning yourself from everything that you're used to, things that your parents were probably used to. So everything that you've encountered growing up, you have to step away and say that's something that I don't feel right with or that I no longer identify with, and I'm going to seek to know or have a greater understanding of myself and reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to go over what a lot of the symptoms are? What's a lot of the, before we get into the, how you, a lot of the trauma comes from everything that happens once you leave. So, um, let's talk about actually what a lot of the symptoms of it are, of the act of the, current situation when you're leaving, um, like, or the stuff that caused the trauma, fear of hell. I know so many people talk about this. I follow quite a few on social media, and it's one of the biggest ones you hear, how traumatizing it is to be a kid and to learn about what's in the Bible, basically, and to be told
Yeah.
a lot of the fundamentalist religions, they really push that on you, that God's watching you, and if you're sinning, and listening to your thoughts, and you're going to go to hell. And the
It's
effect,
just like it's like Santa Claus,
I
like
can't
seriously.
imagine.
I
Um,
think that's the biggest thing for the LGBTQ, especially like if they're aware of either their sexual orientation or their gender at a young age, and they grow up religiously. They're already taught like there's something wrong with you, and that I think is the most difficult thing for them. It's just you're immediately unaccepted.
Well, I think so much about what is natural to be human, to be a person, has been deemed as sin. Everything dealing with sexuality
Oh
or
my
just
god,
self-expression,
we can't even
all
be
sorts of different
people.
things. It makes me think of all the kids who probably lay in bed at night and think that they're going to burn in hell because they're trying to find themselves in the world and
yeah.
discover if this is who they are as a person. I definitely
Yeah.
had moments like that where, I thought about, is this sin? And, like what you said, how God is kind of like Santa Claus. He's always watching,
And he knows
there's,
what you're
there's,
thinking all the
he
time.
knows what
That's
you're
what's
thinking.
really creepy. It's like you don't even have any privacy at all. You don't even have a sense of self.
And I
That's
think it's
so
also the
gross.
fear instilled in you that you have to walk the straight line that the church or your faith or your belief deems that is appropriate.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
like every moment you're thinking about this, it's so alien to me, because I didn't grow up like this, with
Yeah.
every moment of my time spent
Hmm.
wondering, was I being good enough, was I thinking the right things, am I, because the one misstep and you end up in hell, and walking around 24/7 with that fear must be absolutely excruciating. And I remember learning about that people did feel this way. And when you haven't been raised that way, you tend to think, well, they must, some part, like, it can't be real that they really believed it, like, so, because I have a hard time wrapping my head around that. So it must be kind of like somewhere inside they really know that this, but it's more of a up here thing. And I've heard people talking about it, saying, no, that's absolutely false. I 100% believed this. It was my entire
Yeah.
identity. It was my life.
I've been
I
there. Yeah.
yes, and so when that sinks into somebody who has not experienced it, it's really hard for someone like me to, I mean, I can take, obviously I take you at your word, but I still have a hard time. I can't experience it the way you did. I can just listen
Yeah.
to you and try to, be empathetic about it. But it just trying to imagine that is, it's mind boggling how terrifying that must be to exist that way, and the fact that this
Well,
is what they want. They're
I was going to
instilling
say
this.
it's one thing just to have to reconcile your own thoughts and your own sin, but then if you want to take it even a layer deeper than that, part of the trauma also can come from the religious community, whether that's your family or your church or whatever, because then you have all the other eyes on you and how Christianly or how sinful you are. You have that extra layer of judgment. All the time we're processing and we're judging ourselves on our own actions, on our own thoughts, trying to think about, is this sinful or whatever, at least when you're still religious or following a religion. But then you also have that religious community that they kind of feed off of each other, and
Do
see
they
each
tell
other
on
as
each other?
sinful.
They're reporting
See, that's what I
people.
was gonna say.
Yeah.
It's almost kind of like snitch culture in some religions, because, like, say if you're somebody who comes to church and you're not up to standard with some of the other church members or something, they will call you out and say you're doing something wrong, or do you need help. It's like they almost descend on you in a sort of way.
Well, I know that my husband, grew up Jehovah's Witness, and I've witnessed that. That's an actual thing that I'm familiar with. I think what you're talking about is a little more subtle. I know that with JWs, you do certain things or you get in big trouble. So it's not maybe.
I've been pulled into the bishop's office for members telling stuff on me. The one of the members of the church, older guy, he was a custodian at my high school, and I guess he overheard me swearing or something. So I just got randomly like pulled into the bishop's office during church one day to have like a discussion with the bishop about like swearing. And so I'm just like, wow, I can't even fucking be my own self at school. Like they're everywhere.
Little spies.
When I left Christianity, when I kind of renounced Christianity, something that kind of helped me bridge away from that was I instantly wanted to rebel, and I kind of turned towards Satanism. I'm not a Satanist, and Neogenians aren't Satanists or whatever, but one thing that stuck out with me, I read Anton LaVey's book, and at the very beginning of the Satanic Bible, he said when he was playing the organ at the carnival, he would see all of the pastors and all the church members in the front looking at the dancing girls, and then on Sunday they would be back in church, begging.
Oh yeah, it's always hypocritical in the church.
A huge double standard and hypocrisy, but then they are the first ones to judge against you. And I know I was being vague a little bit earlier, but you see churches and church communities like the Westboro Baptist Church who just stand there with their horrible signs and say, God hates FA, the word, all kinds of things like that. And, they kind of push themselves onto people in the most horrible way and their religious beliefs. It's almost like they weaponize their beliefs.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's a manipulative tactic. I mean, I feel like mainstream religion like this, especially in like a Christian nationalist sense, like that kind of Christianity, it's just such a giant manipulation in its whole like very system. It manipulates you to behave a certain way, and then they use that to force other people to behave a certain way. It's disgusting.
Is that part of the do you think that's part of the psychological aspect of, well, if we can get everyone to believe what we believe, then it makes our belief true? Do you think it's that's the reasoning, or is it that they're fearful, that it's coming from a fear-based thing?
Fear-based.
It's fear, but the hatred comes from fear-based.
I don't think anybody's actually thinking, how can we control people? I think it's just like, well, shit, like we're all gonna burn, like we have to save everybody.
Right. And I also don't think that it's that they need to get more people to believe it for it to be true. They think that it's true with all of their being.
Right.
And they're so afraid that they want to have everybody else believe it, or
but
God will rain down fire on humanity or whatever.
Yeah, but the hatred is the thing that they spew onto others is what I don't understand. If you
they think they're doing
excuses, like they say God is a jealous God and God is a vengeful God, but he loves you.
But you see, that's something that I never get a satisfactory answer about when you actually talk to someone who is firmly in it, and you say, how do you reconcile these things? How do you explain these things? And it always comes down, my husband gets mad at me when I try to say, why didn't you say this? Or why didn't you ask that? My husband left when he was about 14, I think. But he says, Susan, you don't understand. If you push for logic, what you will finally get back after you've been given the answers that they have, in their little booklet, what you get back finally when they're frustrated is, well, the devil has you. That's their out.
Yeah.
The devil
or
has
God
you.
works in mysterious ways.
Oh, I hate that answer.
Yeah.
If
But
you're
God
being led
works in
astray,
mysterious ways
yeah.
is not an answer for how do you explain the wrathful God and the loving God.
I mean, they could justify it with just like their beliefs. I mean, at least for Mormons in the early days, they actually had that whole Meadow Mountain massacre, and they slaughtered people, and they said it was a blood atonement. They would be saved if they killed them. So it was doing them a favor. We're going to murder you, but you're going to be saved. So
yeah. Well, I mean, in the Old Testament, there's God telling people to go into the next town and kill every man, woman, child, animal, whatever in there.
Yeah,
well,
and I know the three of us were talking about Abraham sacrificing his son, and if you say to people, how can you follow a God that wants somebody to murder their children, and they always say, well, that's a test of his love. He would not really have let Abraham do it. That's why he sent the angel.
Yeah, they're adamant. They're adamant about that as being a satisfactory answer to that.
Yeah.
And that's not a satisfactory answer to me, because who cares that it was just a test and they were gonna send an angel to stop it. That doesn't make it okay to do that. Think of it from the kid's point of view. He's going to be sacrificed, and his father's point of view. I
just can't even imagine, like, Dad, what the hell?
Yeah, but I mean, seriously, you're gonna. The answer is, well, God was never intending to do that, but they completely overlook and discount the fact that both father and son were being traumatized, and that was okay with God, and that's okay with
that just sounds psychotically manipulative to me. It's like, let me see what you can do for me and how far you'll go. And it's like, that's like what narcissists do, is they like push your boundaries, right, to see what they can get away with. That just says God sounds like a fucking psycho, really.
Yeah, really. Oh, and what about Job? That's the one where I've heard multiple times from people that's the section where they could not, like, that gave them a lot of cognitive dissonance, and they could not understand how God would do that, like torture somebody like that,
right,
as a test, so for it's totally, Becca,
that's unhealthy. Totally, that's not abuse. Healthy.
No. So with religious trauma, these kinds of things, finding out about the Bible, can cause religious trauma. And what's interesting about the religious trauma, I think, is that you can come from it's the material itself that is the problem. You can come from a family and have one person not have a problem. My husband definitely had issues with it, but his brother is a missionary.
Yeah.
Took the whole
That's
thing.
Tough.
Yeah. And it's how the material will affect some people. I guess ones who think about it. If you're the type who is very much just going to accept what you're told, and maybe you're kind of fearful, but you just figure, just do whatever you're told to do. Hi, Mark. Do whatever you're told to do, and you will get this reward. And I think that's the thing that the people who don't become traumatized hang on to. Because I remember listening to my mother-in-law who would say, I've been given this we get this gift of this afterlife with God. And
I was always told that too. Like, you get a crown with all these jewels and your own castle and all of this
really?
stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the JWs don't have that, I don't think. But
in Mormonism, you become a god and you get to create your own planet.
Oh, okay. They didn't get that in JWs, but But my husband, completely different situation. He was able to think things through, and I think if you are a critical thinker, the cognitive dissonance is going to kick in, and I think that can cause lots of problems because you don't understand how to reconcile these things, and it causes such stress inside that you have to try to alleviate that. And then what time is it? It's like 9:30. When people leave, another whole aspect, we can continue to talk about the kinds of things that you worried about, but we can also move on to talk about a huge aspect of religious trauma, which is what happens when you leave, because I think a lot kicks in at that point.
Well, I think when you leave, it creates a cascade of issues.
Yeah.
For one thing, one of the biggest things, or at least one that I recognized, is you have a lot of social problems. So immediately once you leave, there's almost sort of this distance that's created between not only with you and a lot of your friends and your family, but there's like this distance where it's harder to relate because they're constantly trying to reconvince you of religion, and you're trying to convince them of why you no longer need it. So there's all of these different social issues that arise, and also guilt because they try and make it seem like you're doing something wrong by renouncing religion, or that you're forsaken, or you have no options left, or there's all of these different excuses that you're given. And I'm sure a lot of people, I'm sure their families mean well, but in a lot of scenarios, they get that kind of sharp,
there are, like with JW's active shunning, and that is
that's
not
unfortunate.
They maybe in their heads they think it's a meaning well thing, but that's not a healthy meaning well thing. That causes severe damage to people. So not only is your entire community and your family, your friends suddenly not there, but it's like an entire, like the entire buffet, it comes from that one, all the aspects are on the one table, and you have moved away from that table.
I think if you're lucky enough to still be able to have a normal relationship with your family where you can still be around them, stuff like that, but you're no longer religious, you don't relate to them on that level, it can definitely make holidays and events, all those different things uncomfortable. And for people who just absolutely cannot be around their family or their friends after
my God,
religion.
I remember when I officially resigned from the Mormon church, like I literally had to do it like by physically like writing a letter saying like, take me off your membership list, like go away. So
how old were you when you did that?
This was honestly like 6 years ago. So yeah, like 6 or 7 years ago. Pretty recent. I mean, I was mentally falling off from the religion, but I wanted to officially like do it as like a big symbol. But it's funny because they send a letter back. First of all, they try to get you to talk to a bishop, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Like nobody's, because at that point they just want to convince you to stay. So I had to send another letter being like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't have to do that. Like if you don't take me off your list or consider me a ex-Mormon, like it's gonna get like legal.
Wow. So they actually, it's not like you can just stop going. They actually
you gotta like it, because otherwise you're still considered a member, you're just inactive. And what really triggered it and pissed me off is my adopted father at the time sent my church records from Utah to a local ward in my area, and I didn't tell me or anything. So I just randomly had missionaries knocking on my door asking for me, like my name. I'm like, what the fuck? How did you get me here? My roommate ended up answering and told them I didn't live here. But the thing is after that process, and I was just like, stop it. They finally sent me the letter saying, okay, but here's the thing. All of your blessings, all of your temple work, everything that we've given you, the whole religious hocus pocus, we're taking that away. Like bibbity bobbity boo, it's gone. So a part of that, when you're born into Mormonism, as an infant, the family will take you into the temple and they will do a sealing. So, like sealed together for all
Oh,
eternity.
okay.
So when I was adopted, they did an official like sealing, but since I officially resigned, that was taken away. And so my adopted mother at the time, when I told her, you know, what I was going through, she was extremely hurt by that because it meant that I was no longer eternally sealed to her and that family anymore. So she was very hurt by that. And I'm just thinking like, I mean, I don't talk to those people anymore. It's done and over with. But I'm just like that. It's like I'm here. Like we're a family, aren't we? Like, why are you getting so butthurt about like some stupid belief?
Wow, that's serious. I mean, the kind of I didn't know people. I knew people that went to church, and I knew people that went to church regularly. I had a couple Catholic friends who went, but they were very quiet about it, really. And everybody else was more of a holiday kind of
Yeah.
Protestant, and it wasn't something. It wasn't evangelical, which is I had
Okay.
no experience with that. I have since found out that a lot of the fundamentalists would consider the people that I knew not even as Christians. I mean, like Presbyterian or Unitarian or whatever, they would be like, oh, that's because
Right.
they only went a couple times a year. They didn't really talk about it. It wasn't in the life. It was more that just kind of for show, but also what they were raised as, like what you were talking about, Philip. It was just a family history thing, and
Yeah, very tradition based.
very tradition based, but it's not like they lived with the fear of God in them because they didn't really talk about it. So that's
Yeah.
why I had that idea that, well, people don't really believe it. And then when I encountered people who really believed it, like seriously, it was
To
so
the core.
shocking. Pardon me?
Oh, I said to their core.
Oh, yes, yes, because I had not experienced that before, um, and no, that would be terrifying. It's like, oh, you really, really think that's real?
Yeah,
Whereas,
yeah, it's weird
you
to
know,
think back at a time when I truly believed in everything with my whole heart and soul. You know, I was a Molly Mormon, but leaving was, I mean, it's like I knew rationally, I understood rationally. I'm like, okay, this truly is not real. This is just like a fantasy. Like I rationally understood that, but the emotions with that was so devastating. It left such like a huge hole. I just felt like my whole foundation crumbled, and a lot of what I still deal with, I'm much better these days. But when it was first like ground shaking, I still kind of deal with this, but the biggest thing is like self trust, like trusting yourself to decide things for yourself. When before it was always like I had God to pray to, you know, to help me out make decisions, and I would look to the feelings of like what is the right thing to do, what is not the right thing to do. So taking that away, I'm like, wow, I'm having a really hard time making decisions and choices like just with my own voice in my own head. And part of that too is it like opens up your whole world. And a lot of what I struggled with is feeling very stupid in that world. I'm like, I don't know anything about anything, because religion always explained everything for me. But when you take that away, the world opens up and it's like, holy shit.
and you found out that the world the was operated in a way that was different from the way that you had been taught.
Yeah.
Mormons are creationists.
Yes.
Oh, they are. Okay. Oh, yeah. Forgive my ignorance on that.
No.
I know that
No, God created us, and we're down here for the plan of salvation. We're here to inhabit physical bodies, and if we do everything right and check our list twice, we can
is it
exalted with God in the highest kingdom of heaven
is it
and
the
become our own gods.
is it like the 6,000-year-old history of creation as
Yeah,
opposed to
they
evolution?
do. Mormons do have like their foundation somewhat in the Bible, so they do read the Bible and stuff like that, and like the Old Testament and the New Testament. They just kind of like capitalize on that in their own way. Mormons are very weird. It's like
Yeah, I
like a
don't.
Christian religion, but yet it's
Yeah,
like a like parts of masonry and like occult stuff,
it's
but they
a
just like
it's
fashioned it into more Christian
it's such
stuff.
a mashup. Like it's confusing to me sometimes. I love
It
listening to you
is. It's
talking
very
about it because
eclectic, actually, when you try to
yeah,
figure out like what is what. Like Joseph Smith literally just like made a scrapbook of different shit.
I
So
know.
just
And
to get back to foundations really quick, I know
yeah.
Jan, you were talking about whenever we step away from religion or whenever people renounce religion, that can be really groundbreaking and you feel like your foundation is kind of crumbling away.
Mhm.
So even though that can be really difficult and really hard to work through and kind of find yourself, I also think it's kind of a beautiful transition because it gives us the opportunity to build a new foundation, something that's really sturdy and something like you said, how we can trust ourselves and kind of gain a better understanding of ourselves in reality. And that's kind of the point of the Neogenian. And I really love the direction that we're going as the Neogenian, but also I love the direction that I've gone personally ever since. If I look back to being religious and kind of having that foundation crumble away, like I said, it's a beautiful process to be able to build something new and sturdy in its place, something built on reason.
Philip, did you go through like this intense like not panic but anxiety and like this crisis situation, loneliness and
Yeah, that's a huge part of it is the loneliness because especially in your community, everybody's religious, your family, your classmates, your friends, everybody,
Mhm.
or at least it feels that way. So sometimes it can almost feel like you're on a journey by yourself, not only to find yourself, but to create yourself into something
Yeah.
new. So I know definitely that loneliness, how that can feel from time to time. But I think that's something that everybody kind of has to work through at some point
Yeah.
whenever they're stepping away from religion because you were so ingrained with those faith-based beliefs that you kind of have to slowly decondition yourself from all of that was instilled in you, and it is a process.
I mean, just mentally getting rid of the concept of God, I'd say just without the community stuff, like that by itself would leave you really feeling really lonely because you're so used to feeling the presence of God with you all the time. It's like
Yeah.
losing a friend when you bag that out.
Well,
And in terms of religious trauma, even though you're doing that work and you're deconditioning yourself from all of that stuff, you still have different triggers that can occasionally bother you on the
Mm-hmm.
way,
Yeah.
things that you encounter or whenever you encounter a person that's like, you're going to hell and you get in this argument with people that really want to debate with you why you're wrong and why you should believe in God. It definitely can be triggering. There's a lot of people out there that want to, like I said before, weaponize their belief and kind
Yeah.
of use it against you.
that must be really hard if you're just carrying on in a in a good moment, like you've done a lot of healing, you've been through a lot of the
Yeah.
prophets, and all of a sudden you get blindsided with something and suddenly you're triggered, and
Yeah.
that must be well, that's why they liken it to its PTSD and complex PTSD.
That's happened to me before. I was like I've been out of Mormonism for a long time, and it was just like I think like 3 years ago, when I was in LA. I was in a Taco Bell, and just randomly two Mormon missionaries walked in, and it was a small Taco Bell, and they were like saying hi to like everybody in the shop, and just for some reason, just
Mm.
the mere sight of them, I went into like an anxiety attack, and I just froze up like a panic deer in the headlights, and they tried to like come up to me and be like hello, and I'm just like that's like all I could
No,
muster was like
I
no,
nope. I escaped your cult. I
no,
escaped your
go
cult.
away.
I know.
I'm like breathing heavily, sweating and everything, and then once I grabbed my Taco Bell and got the hell out of there, but like once I left I had to think for a minute. I'm like, why did that like bother me so much? Like Mormon missionaries are everywhere, like why would that make me react that way? And I'm like, I think this is just like residual just
Well,
trauma.
yeah,
Like,
you don't always know when something is going to trigger you. There might be other times when you can handle it. Depends on whatever's happening at the
Yeah.
moment with you.
yeah.
But
And I think it
that's
doesn't help
terrifying.
that religion is so ingrained into our society. In government, we have the Christian nationalists that are, attacking everybody
Mm.
all over the place. but you also see it, if you get sick, they're saying, especially if you have, cancer or something really horrible like that, they definitely push the religious narrative,
I
as kind of a
yeah.
crutch. But also with addiction, they want you to go through the process, and they give you, that's a huge part of the rehab process. Alcoholics Anonymous, all of that, it's so ingrained into all of these different processes
Yeah.
that doesn't work for everybody. But sorry, Jan, what were you gonna say?
I kind of forgot for a minute, but I was thinking about you talking about like religion being in like the alcoholics like anonymous like program because I was hospitalized years ago for alcoholism, and I was brought into a meeting for all the alcoholics, and I picked up the pamphlet for it, and I haven't looked at this shit before, and the first sentence was something about giving all of your will to God. And I just dropped it like a fucking hot potato. I'm like,
Yeah. Did it say
no.
God, or did it say a higher power? Because
No, it said God.
I know it's very. I know someone who went through the program.
It was more like emphasis on God,
Yeah.
not just generic higher power. It was somebody's own typed up like printed out thing.
I've heard that needs to be updated, but even at the taking it at face value of when, if they tell you, well, it doesn't have to be the Christian God, it's meant to be just some thing, higher than you are. But of course, with the wording and the way they use it, it's very much Christian oriented throughout.
Yeah.
And that can be so hard on people. I have a friend who went through that and had the hardest time with that part of it. And had to,
I did. I was absolutely like, how am I gonna fucking like use this material with that nonsense going on?
Already dealing with religious trauma.
I remember what I was gonna say, Philip. You were talking about Christian nationalists and stuff. I'm like, I feel like it's hard to heal from religious trauma. It's like I do in some ways, but then it's like I feel like it's opened up in other ways, especially with the backlash against like trans folks, like the religion saturated media and everything. It scares me to death. Like sometimes I'm just scared to death. I'm like, I'm just gonna end up being burnt at the stake because people are so crazy and religious. Like, it doesn't help,
and it just increases the trauma for people.
Yeah, I feel like I'm being traumatized by religion in another way. I'm like, all these crazy religious people are gonna come out and burn me.
But Philip, you said
Florida,
something. Oh,
Florida seems like a scary place. It seems like the Wild West for Christians.
Yeah. People are leaving. People are fleeing different states because of laws
running for their fucking lives.
That's
literally.
not even exaggerating. Like, they actually are fleeing states, and
straight up,
and causing economic problems because of the number of people moving around is so large. But Philip, you said something a little while ago, and that was how there's excitement in leaving. There's positives, obviously, in leaving, when someone just realizes that they can no longer handle the issues in religion. They just can't. They just know that it's wrong, and and they start to make that disconnect. It's not like it's, well, one day I'm here and the next day I'm gone and everything's fine. You have to sort of slowly break off. And one of the positive things is some excitement over the fact that you can discover a new world, discover yourself, discover.
And that's
what's
the way it was
there.
for me, especially because when I was trying to work out all these contradictions with Christianity and all the things that I had been told, I wanted to read other material, stuff that I have been told wasn't important. Like, if you ask anybody who is a Christian, or a lot of them anyway, what philosophy is, or if it would be okay to read Satanism to understand it, I wanted to read other things in order to understand it, to juxtapose that with what I believed, so that I knew I wasn't just reading whatever I was told. And even philosophy is just woo woo to them. They don't understand it. They think there's no point to it. I'm sure no Christian probably has picked up a philosophy book, or or they probably don't have the desire to. But I wanted to learn all these new things. So when you're talking about the excitement, when I renounced my religious beliefs, I know I mentioned before, I kind of use Satanism as a bridge, just the philosophy part. I wasn't practicing or anything. I just wanted to understand. And I was kind of wanting to rebel and figure out the adversary that I was told was so horrible. I got into the philosophical side of that. And then I discovered there's a whole world of philosophy out there that you
Right.
can understand, the true nature of reality and get into all of these different great writers that have so many great works, and it is exciting
Were
to
you
kind of break away those chains of
Yes.
were you still
religion.
scared though? Were you still suffering daily from, am I, am I wrong? Am I still sinning? Am I?
When it came to just at the beginning, when it came to the Satanism stuff, because it felt wrong, like I had the
Yeah,
guilt of it,
yeah,
because they're like, oh, it's Satan, he's evil and stuff. But especially when I was looking into LaVeyan Satanism, because it's mostly individual, it's kind of selfish, but
yeah,
it's definitely a lot better and a better step than Christianity. Like,
yeah,
if somebody is having drama, don't ask them, it's not your business. And there's all these different rules in there and stuff, but I
yeah,
liked the philosophical side of it. I liked learning and understanding, and it felt like a new window was opened. Whereas in religion, you just kind of have this narrow pathway of, this is the word of God, you need to revert back to Leviticus or to Revelations or to whatever chapter we say the
yeah,
answer is in.
yeah.
And if you go to these outside sources, there's nothing in there for you. You need to go back to the Bible.
What do you guys think about this? Because when I hear that, because again, not raised in this, not having to
Yeah.
think this way, but when I hear that there are people who absolutely believe that their life is very narrow. This is what they're taught, that
Yeah.
so there's this God who created us to live this very narrow way, follow these rules, do these things. it it's, how do you reconcile that with a why bother if you're
Well, you see,
God?
they're
Because,
satisfied with not understanding the world because they think their answer is everything.
but think of it this way. Who, when I hear that, I think, what what God would want something, would want to do that? You're creating, it would be like being able to do anything because you're God, and you've created, it's almost, it's sadistic because you're
Yeah.
creating beings and you're like, you must walk between these very narrow lines, all of you. This is
Yeah.
these two
This
lines,
is
and
a
and if you stray, I'm going to be like, oh, you're going to hell, you're going to hell, you're
yeah.
all going to hell. And they're walking
This
in
is a great
fear.
comment from Mark, because this kind of is outlining what we were saying. Mark says one book authoritarianism makes critical reading of the Gospels impossible. And that's exactly what I was trying to say. So, like, I was trying to be critical of, the Bible and everything that I was told to believe, like what you were saying, Susan. I was in that narrow mind scope,
But
and I wanted
how do
to,
you reconcile a God who would do that? Like, if you were God and you were, could do anything,
yeah.
is that what you, wouldn't you want to see what your creation could do?
I don't think I've ever thought about that.
Oh,
Not especially not as a believer.
see, this is something that has always surprised me, that the most powerful being, and all it does is create this very narrow two lines, puts everything through it, and watches to see if anybody goes outside the lines.
That's another thing that, now that you mention it, I had big problems with when I was asking. Is I was asking about the size of the universe and all of the other worlds out there, if there could be other life outside
Yeah.
of the earth, and I was always told that the earth is God's creation and everything else is the heavens. So they just kind of blanket statement it as the heavens, and there's no need to guess or to try and understand if there's life out there, because we are the children of
And
God.
those people, I can tell you, have never seen one of those amazing, like, animations where you start with somebody on a picnic
The
blanket
infinite zoom.
and go back.
Oh yeah, that Carl Sagan like classic.
I don't know whom, when I saw this, every time I see it, I'm just, it blows your mind. because
And that was one of the questions that I asked is
yeah,
how could you possibly say that there's no life out there?
they don't know
Not
how
saying
big it is. They,
exactly. And I
yeah.
would always say, I'm not trying to convince you that there's aliens. I'm trying to say any kind of life out there, you know?
And
And
we're a
they would say those
small
are just,
planet.
yeah. And
And
they would say that's the heavens.
but not only
The
are we
and
a small planet relatively, I mean, compared to all the planets that are out there, I mean, I'm sure there's ones that are much tinier, but we're certainly not anything enormous. We don't seem very special when you see what's out
yeah.
there. They certainly have no idea. I mean, when you zoom out enough and then it shows you that you're like, wow, that was enormous. I can't believe how much we've traveled. And then it shows you that it's just one little tiny, 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 tiny dot square of something much, much, much bigger. And you realize everything you just went through is teeny compared to now what you're going through. And that's only a teeny thing compared to what's next. And
Yeah.
Right,
and
right.
that's when you realize it is fucked up to think that why would God create all of that? Why would God create stuff
In
that's so far away that we don't even know it from here?
in Mormonism, they taught us that there are many worlds, other worlds, as you know, grains of sand on the beach that God created, and each one of them is, populated with people. But I was always told that there's no like crazy looking aliens. We all look the same. So there's like
And Jesus
humans.
went to the other planets too?
I think each planet has their own thing going on because again, if like you
But
die
that's
and
not what the
you're
Bible
exalted
says.
with God,
That's
no,
not.
this is what Mormons are
Oh,
saying. So if you
Mormons.
die and you're
Yeah.
exalted with God, you become your own God and you get to be governing your own planet,
Yeah, they did a little bit extra, but Christians,
populating it with your own spirit children.
fundamentalists don't have that. That's a Mormon thing. It's like
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
and not only is it this one planet, but everything in the Bible takes place in a little tiny area on this planet.
Also they get really mad if you tell them they can't fact check the Bible with the Bible.
Oh, I know. Yeah. But anyway, we've kind of digressed from because I this is something that I get into when I want logical answers, and I guess I would just end up being told that the devil is in me and I have demons, and that would be
You're
the
being
answer.
tempted. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just so I never get anywhere with that, but that's why it would not work with me, at least not now. If I was born into it, I think it would have been absolutely horrifying.
Then you have no choice. Your
But,
world is what is taught to you.
That was another thing I was going to say. So Phil, because you were talking about that excitement and being able to do that, but I was reading a lot of quotes from people who suffer from religious trauma, and it's so sad when you don't get that feeling of excitement and wanting to create themselves. You're hearing about is that they're in this constant crisis and they're depressed because I mean not only have they lost everything that was familiar to them, but they're just it's like they're grieving for a lost like relative or friend. And Jan, you said that it's like having when you lose having God or Jesus. It's like losing a friend, and it's that feeling of and somebody was talking about how it like, and I never had that. That's not real. And I never had that connection. I just thought I did. I was conditioned into believing that was there. And so they're very, very traumatized. I mean, that's why it's trauma. And it's really sad. My heart goes out to them, and I can only hope, I know we're running out of time, but I can only hope that they can process enough and work to where they can certainly finding something like the Neogenian, I think would really help them, people with religious trauma, because it's not just, oh, well, there is no God and we just are like nothing important. No, we know that we altogether are God. We are the thing. We are what they have been taught was outside of them that created them, but they were beholden to. So instead, we are responsible for ourselves. We are it. And as a collective, we are all it together. And suddenly, I think they would not feel so lost. They would not feel so alone. I think they would feel purpose again, which is what we have in the Neogenian, which is so important.
I think that's also a good reason why we need to build a new society, a teleocratic society that's purpose-driven and focuses on the quality of life for everybody. Because in the society that we have now, with all these Christian nationalists attacking everybody and all of that, it's definitely not something that everybody can prosper in. We need a new society, and when you're able to be focus-driven or purpose-driven, rather, you can focus on yourself and work on all of those problems that come with that, especially once you start to realize who we are, what we are, and why we're here. You can process that new information, that new foundation.
And I think it will offer things that they have, that they're lacking, that they're missing and want, instead of having left and feeling maybe empty and confused and alone. They know that the religion was not right. They know that they've recognized. I hear that some people who I follow, they know it's not like they're secretly wanting to go back or anything. They know that's it. It really fucked them up, but they don't have something meaningful really to replace it. All they have is, well, I know that was bad. So the world that we are building, what you're embarking on now, is, I think, what is going to be very, very helpful for people who are suffering from religious trauma. And I just wanted to say, I know we're running out of time, and I wanted to say one more thing, kind of to wrap it up, because I know that we talk about there being like reason above all. There's no reason that we can't each have a mythos that appeals to us. I think, and I think it's important to point it out, that if you have something that's appealing to you, that you want for yourself, but that you understand is a mythos that works well for you, but not truth, it's not reality, that there's nothing wrong with that. And as long as everyone is allowed to use whatever works for them. Because I know we get people asking, well, can I still be pagan, or, can I still have, like, I like the idea of unity kind of thing from this religion. Well, you can have all of that.
Well, sure, as long as there's some rational understanding that it is just mythos and a psychological tool, not actual fact.
Yes, and that once you understand how everything works together, how we are individuals, zetas, and a collective, then you can use whatever personal mythos works for you, and there would be no need to go around wanting everybody else to have your mythos as well. We would all understand, just like the way we express ourselves, that it's just it's personal. So I just wanted to point that out too, that, at some point, hopefully we can have that instituted where everybody understands what's going on from a rational point of view.
Right. I mean, like, as a Neogenian, I still practice just kind of like loose paganism, Wiccan, like, here and there. I have my tarot cards, I use those, but I have an understanding that it's all, as a psychological tool, it's not real. There's no like deities or anything like coming to bother me.
Yeah, it's exploring aspects of
Thankfully,
yourself.
That would be annoying.
Yeah. So,
and I think it's also a part of your personal journey, and it can help you with your will forming, to work on yourself. Like you said, it's a psychological tool. There's a huge benefit to ritual in certain aspects. If you have a goal, if you're purpose driven and want to use that for a certain reason, but
ritual can be very empowering.
And, I very much enjoy ritual and practices such as that. I find it very invigorating, especially, by myself, sure, but I love to do it with other people, and I think it's nice to share like a moment of understanding.
Yeah, I think there's many, many positive aspects of that. I just want to go in. You guys have had a great conversation, And I have been looking at comments. I know probably you guys have glanced at them as well. It seems like you really
And
enjoyed the topic.
also, thank you to Mark and Elise for moderating for us.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. And I saw that, I think it was Elise. No, Joanna, thank you for gifting a membership. I don't know who got that because normally it tells us. Um,
Flower
and
Dragon gifted a membership.
yes, and thank you. Oh, thank you so much. And I think Pook's got that one.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know who got yours, Joanna. I know we have people that could use them. So I don't know if it was just not going to tell us, but I hope somebody got it. If you are not currently a member, I can see Jeannie and
That's
is it
weird. It's like
Sachette?
almost nobody got it.
And yeah, there might be some setting. I know Hope and also somebody else I saw in here, Melinda, I think, don't have memberships. And there might be something that you have to set in YouTube that allows you to accept a membership. Do either of you know about that?
I believe. Yeah, I think
So-
there's a setting there.
So if there is one,
Check it out.
if you don't have a membership, try to go in and see if you can set that, because if there is a membership floating out there looking for someone to connect to, it might just grab you if you can figure out. Oh, all right. Well, no, there you go. Elise just gifted one, and Angela got it. So
Cool.
I don't understand. See, and I know Melinda and Jeannie, I can see them in here, don't have one, and I don't know how I don't know how the system works. I'm sorry, but thank you, Elise, and thank you for everybody who gifted. Thank you again, Morg. Oh, Cassidy got it.
Cassidy got it.
Yay,
I didn't see that.
Cassidy! It didn't come through my thing, so hooray! Thanks, Joanna. Thank you so much, and good for Cassidy. So this was I feel like we had a really good discussion.
Yeah,
and
thank you for inviting me. And we did this on the fly too.
Yeah,
by the
we
way.
did.
We really didn't prepare. I mean, I actually just happened to have this study that I found like a few days before Susan asked me to come on and talk about this. So I'm like, oh, check out this thing that I found, because I was very curious, like a couple of weeks ago, like just how many people in the world are suffering from religious trauma. And I was delighted to find this study with so many great sources and such great contribution from very well-educated people, and to just show, and it kind of helps me feel better. I mean, it's bad because people are traumatized, but it makes me feel better because I know I'm not an oddball. Like I'm not like the weird religious person, or the weird person who grew up like religious.
No,
like,
you aren't. There are a lot
like it's not
of people.
Something that I think is just me. So
no, there's a lot of people. Like I said, I follow people with religious trauma on different social media, and it's huge. And there's different levels of struggling. Philip, I think you came out of that, or are coming out of it really well. If everybody was doing as well as you are, it'd be fantastic. But I know that people are really struggling with it, and I can only hope that they find us as I think a very, very good source of healing and help. So
it gets better. It gets better with time if you just keep leaning into exploring life in the universe and in yourself without God. It's going to get better, and it's going to feel more right.
We are God. So
also, I think it's important to be patient with yourself, because it takes time.
I mean, it's not like a linear like progress. You don't just like magically become better. It's like, you'll do fine for a while, and then maybe just one little thing sets you off. You just you've got to be nice to yourself about it.
That's why it's trauma. That's what trauma is. Thank you, Fashida, and congratulations to Wojciech, who got another one. Really appreciate that. I love seeing those, and it's so nice to know that you guys are so generous to help another person. I think I love those gift memberships. I think it's
pay it forward. It's awesome.
It's a fabulous way to help, and then it helps somebody else. So we are off for 3 weeks, you guys, because we have things. Oh yes, I'm going to do a quokka. We have things coming up. We are going to be working on a new video, and we will be having. We don't even know what we sort of screwed up the end of the month. with the secret, but we still do it once a month. We just don't know when we're doing it always. Okay, I'm doing this. I'm doing it. Hang on.
Yeah, so I think the next time we'll see you is towards the end of July, mid to end July.
Yeah, here we go. There's little.
And in the meantime, thank you everybody for your support. We appreciate you coming to the stream, giving us your support and your great comments. And thank you to Jan for being a guest and talking about religious trauma.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Really
my
good
pleasure.
content. Hi Corvus. I didn't notice you before, but hello. Hi to all of you. I don't think we've said hi individually, but we love you guys. Oh, I can see Eric in here, and all the regulars are here. Thank you, Morg, for coming, and Laura and Tyler and Kate, and thank you, Becca. That is so sweet of you. Thank you. Ren, of course, always here, always good to see you. You guys are the best. We say it all the time, but it's so true.
Oh yeah,
it's so true. Thank you, Pooks, and thank you guys for coming by. We will see you in a few weeks. Good night. Thank you, Elise and Mark. Bye.
Bye. Good night.